Hello, it's Uncommon Fossil here with 10 types and getting back to the Reasonably Effective podcast. This is officially, I guess, labeled episode 2. And just a little seeing things have been for you. How has your week been going for you, 10 types?
It's been pretty good. I've been messing around with the new set some more with Crown Zenith. I've been playing with some control decks with the new Oranguru and then the new Calyrex, which are both kind of fun. I don't know if they're that good, but overall the set's kind of introduces a few funny cards. A lot of the cards are still pretty expensive, which is a bit annoying, but overall I think it's pretty fun, and I haven't been doing too much else. But yeah, I've been also doing a bunch of Marvel Snap. So yeah, what have you been doing though?
Yeah, I mean, life itself outside of gaming has been busy for me, so my Pokemon in gaming time has been reduced. I have not really been doing the Crown Zenith cards at all. Been just doing the daily challenges in live, and actually tried out the new Eternatus deck, which I managed to win without ever attacking with Eternatus a bunch of times, just wheezing them, grinding them down there, and some PTCGO, just this and that. And I still am trying my hand at Magic the Gathering too, which is actually a little bit fun too. Uh,
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm enjoying it. I don't know long term how it is, but I'm in that new phase where there's a lot of newness, and so excitement comes with it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. When you like play a new game or like a new format, it's really fun just messing around and learning this stuff. And you're not going to get bored anytime soon because there's obviously a lot of depth. The online client there also has a lot more like options as well, and it's just better overall, right?
Yeah, it's much more developed than PTCGO or Live. You have a lot of different gameplay modes to choose from, which Pokemon seems to not want to do and stuff. So there's positives to it. You know, I whether it's just very different game too, which I'm enjoying. Uh,
Yeah. So, but I think it's time to talk about some Pokemon now. That's what everyone's here for.
yes.
And we're gonna start our first segment, which is involving like quiz type thing again, game show, trivia style thing. Pretty much we have multiple choice questions for the other person based on stats and stuff. And you have three choices. And I'll start with my first question to you. And
Okay.
which of these, what were you saying?
I just said sounds good.
Okay. So, of course, it sounds good as I always do. But which of these Pokemon V Stars V Star power does the most damage? Is it
Okay.
Arceus V Star, Giratina V Star, or Mawile V Star?
Was it the V Star power does the most damage?
Yeah, specifically the V Star power.
Okay, so Arceus, Giratina, and Mawile.
Yeah.
And I believe that's Giratina.
Um, and can you explain that as well?
Uh,
Why?
well, I see. I haven't. Giratina's V Star. I see. I don't remember what it does. Arceus's V Star power just gets you cards, and Mawile. I really don't know what it does at all. I know Giratina's a pretty good attacker, so that's why I chose that one. I got to
Well,
say.
Giratina V Star's V Star power doesn't actually do any damage. It does the instant KO.
Okay.
But
Oh,
but
that's
none of them
right.
do any damage.
So.
So they were all right. Yeah.
Okay.
So even if you had said Arceus there, you'd be correct. Mawile's is essentially it's a Guzma,
Mm-hmm.
except you need to switch Mawile V-Star into the active, but it's an ability. It doesn't do any damage.
Okay.
And then Giratina's or Arceus, none of them do any damage. Giratina's is the closest because it gets a KO, but it doesn't actually do damage. So yeah, there wasn't really a wrong answer there, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I want to play Giratina. It's been pretty good. It initially was expensive, so hopefully I'll pick it up and start playing with that soon. All right, so question for you here. Which of the following amazing rare Pokemon does the most damage? We have Zamazenta, Yveltal, and Reshiram.
I think and we're like ignoring weakness and all that, right? I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yeah,
It's
yep, just the
it's
regular
gotta be
attack.
Reshiram, which does I think a total of 330. It does 270 to the active and then 60 to itself as well.
That's true. I wasn't thinking about the 62 itself, but you're right. That's even better than I was, yes. And Zamazenta does 180, which is clearly less. And the Yveltal is very powerful, but it knocks Pokemon out, which does technically zero damage, as we were talking about before with Giratina.
Yeah. And there are like I think I think Reshiram's it's generally seen as like the most powerful in terms of big damage, right? It does. It's
Yeah.
kind of obviously you've also just one shots though. Both of those see a lot of play though with Lugia, so
I mean, there's
pretty
other
good.
ones like which depend on energies discarded and such, like with Rayquaza. So, but
Oh
I
yeah,
want to stay away from that because that complicates things.
yeah, like Rayquaza, Zacian, those types you don't really want to go into. But so I'll go
Yep.
to my next one. A bit harder now. There
Okay.
is an actual like right answer and wrong answers here. But which of these Pokemon has the most HP? Is it Radiant Charizard, Radiant Blastoise, or Radiant Venusaur?
Radiant Charizard, Radiant Blastoise, Radiant Venusaur.
Yeah,
Um,
some weird Pokemon, but not too weird.
so I'm partly just trying to think through what they are. Um, I'll say Radiant Blastoise.
No, it is actually Radiant Charizard. With
Real?
it, Radiant
Wow.
Charizard, yeah, it has
Okay.
160. Radiant Blastoise has 150, and Radiant Venusaur also has 150. It's I guess it's because the that Charizard's like an attacker, whereas the other two are
Hmm.
more of support Pokemon. But honestly, I was surprised at that as well. Generally, I think of Blastoise and Venusaur as being bigger, but Radiant Charizard actually has the most health here.
Okay. Yeah, I mean Charizard's obviously hugely popular, but I don't think of it as a tanky Pokemon. So okay, interesting there. All right, and my second question gets a little trickier also for you. So see what you how you handle this one. So which Pokemon card lets you draw the most cards? Okay, Galarian Articuno V, Rotom V, or Entei V. So going with the V Pokemon.
Let's see. So Glen Articuno and Entei, I think they both draw one. Wait, you said they're all the Glen Articuno V, Entei V, Rotom V?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, what's Rotom V? Is Rotom V draw three and your turn ends? I think it's you said most draws the most cards, right?
Draws the most. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's Rotom V, right?
Yep, you did. You got it. Rotom V draws three, turn ends. So good for a setup, but hopefully you don't have to use it after that after turn one.
Yeah, it's and that's like essentially the same as Zacian as well, right?
Yes. Yep, the same as that, and I think there might be some others too. But yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So that wasn't too bad. I haven't played Rotom. Rotom's more of your deck, but
right.
yeah.
But I figured
Okay.
you're aware of it though.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But now moving on to the last question.
Hmm.
These are also three Pokemon V.
Okay.
Which of these though has the lowest retreat cost?
Mm.
And the first one is Morpeko V. The second one is Oranguru V. The third one is Omastar V.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so not Pokemon V Pokemon I played a lot with, and retreat cost is not something I pay. It gets a lot of
Oh, sorry. Let
attention.
me make one clarification.
Yes.
Morpeko V from Sword and Shield or Shining Fates. They're the same one. There's um
Okay.
the lightning one, not the dark one.
okay. Um. So I will. The one was the Omastar V, correct?
Yes.
So I'm gonna go with Omastar V. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, you actually got that one right. It is Omastar V. Morpeko V and Oranguru V both have a retreat cost of two. Omastar has a retreat cost of one.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. Glad I got. I that was leading. I certainly lent that way and worked out good. All right. And so I have a bit of a strange question for you, but here, which uh, attack, which of these attacks has the most different Pokemon cards with that attack on it? Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, not counting alternate arts and stuff. But so the first one is Mad Party. So therefore, that gives you
Yep.
you get a sense of where it's going. The second is
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's All Roll Out, and the
Uh-huh.
third one is Triple Draw.
Triple draw.
Yes.
Oh, I don't really know how many Pokemon have triple draw. So let's see. Med Party, there's four. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, there's four.
Hmm.
Let's see. Let's all roll out. I think there's like five or something. There's, I think, Wooloo, Togedemaru, uh, Jigglypuff, Azumarill, and I think there's another one. Um, but I don't remember what it is. But I think there's five. Oh, triple draw. I have no idea what has triple draw.
I know it's one I wasn't really aware of, but drawing three is pretty decent though too. So
It's not bad. I'll go. Let's all roll out. I don't know.
Okay, so it is Lesser Rollout. You got that one
Let's go.
correct. There's actually six of them.
Oh, oh,
Uh,
there's the Blissey. I forgot about
right, the
Blissey.
Blissey, the late, yeah. Right, Mad
But what was the other?
Party. There's four. So Marill, Jigglypuff, Sandshrew.
Yeah. Oh, Sandshoe, and then some Meryl. Yeah.
Yep. So you get six there, and then there's four with triple draw. Um, a Honchkrow, stage ones, Hisuian Electrode, stage one. You have a Whimsicott, stage one, and you have Vaporeon V, which has it also.
Okay. Oh yeah, I remember Vaporeon V and then Hisuian Electrode. I've seen both those actually play. Obviously Vaporeon for the V Star,
Mm-hmm.
but then I have actually seen Hisuian Electrode V Star played. So
Right.
yeah, I'm glad I got that one right.
Yeah, that one was a bit of throwing one at you there. So, all right,
Yeah. So let's go. I won. I won this
you
round.
won again. Yep. So you got all three right. So I'll have to ratchet it up and make it tougher next time. So,
Oh no. Okay.
so that racks up that. So the next segment we're looking at a card or which may lead to a deck, and this one certainly does. And the card we're doing is Rapid Strike Malamar. Something most people are familiar with. A card I've enjoyed playing quite a bit. A card that you really have, I think, disliked
Yeah.
over time. Um,
Yeah.
and so there's the Pokemon itself evolves from Inkay. Malamar is a Rapid Strike card, as said. It's got 120 HP. It does 40 damage per Rapid Strike card in your hand that you reveal, and they all get shuffled in, and that the cost of that is just one psychic energy. So ability to do big damage on a single prize for one energy, it's very appealing in that sense. So it can get to knocking out Vs, I think, pretty easily. V maxes are tough, and V stars I think have hurt the deck too.
Yeah. So as you said, I don't like this. I'm not sure exactly why, but I found the deck to be very linear and boring. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
much in any Rapid Strike Malamar deck, the only attacker is Rapid Strike Malamar.
Yep.
You can occasionally see. I think the only other tech option as an attacker is Bastimian, which is pretty bad. But
Yep.
the Rapid Strike Malamar, it's pretty boring. You just want to draw as much as you can every turn. Really, there's not too many questions about that. The sequencing's relatively straightforward if you played the deck some. I'm not super great with the sequencing, but I have not played the deck like almost at all. So yeah, I don't enjoy it. I feel like it's not a fun deck for me, and it doesn't do anything particularly interesting.
I mean, I think that the sequencing is about the sequencing because when I've played it, I often play Zero Gust, and some people may put in a boss or a Pokemon catcher, but I think for deck space, it's not great to have your supporter. You need a supporter to draw cards because you're trying to get a lot of cards in hand. So you're using your Bruno or Cynthia's Ambition or Karina's Focus to draw cards. So boss does usually you don't want to play a boss in the deck. But how to get, it's about getting to the number of damage you need to knock out the opponent's active. You have to have at least an Inkay on the bench because otherwise you assume you're getting knocked out, and if you can't attack a turn, you're in trouble. And then you want to give yourself the best position for the next turn also. So it's a little puzzle, fairly simple, but it's a number of decisions. What supporter you have and when you sequence the supporter is probably the biggest decision you're making on a lot of turns. And
Yeah.
and
You-
go ahead. You don't. It doesn't sound like the other part is deck building is big on this as many things, and the basic deck choice decision from the beginning was Cinccino engine versus Inteleon engine. I think the Cinccino engine was kind of the initial one that saw play, and I still like that engine. Because you don't start as well. The Inteleon engine really had the most success. I think it made top cut. At a regional event. I think so. So it had success, which you probably don't like to see a deck like that get success, but it did. And because with the Inteleon, the Inteleon cards, a lot of those are Rapid Strike cards, which help your damage, and you can search for the card you need, so you can get the big damage early easier with Inteleon. But with Cinchino, you set up your bench with the Cinchinos, you get the cards you don't want discarded, so your deck really gets concentrated with Rapid Strike cards in the later turns, and you can do big damage late, which is what I think the deck likes to do to me when it works. You can just do big damage, even often late in the game by turn 3 or 4. I can knock out, might be able to one shot a VMAX Pokemon, and that's and if you can do that with a single prize or knock out a VMAX, you're in great shape.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do like decks that build up to big damage, but not this deck. I like if I'm one-shotting a big V Max, V Star, whatever, with a single prizer, I usually want to do it on a basic. That's why I like stuff like Baby Cephalon more,
Yeah,
as well as stuff like some of the amazing rares you mentioned earlier, like Yveltal as well
yeah.
as Rayquaza. Um, and then also I don't know, I feel like it's kind of awkward to set up. You're doing these big pushes to do big damage output, but then you're also falling you need to like set up your bench or else you're
hmm
just gonna get completely messed up. And I feel like honestly it's a worse version of Lunatone and Solrock.
Well, I mean, this was obviously around before that, and maybe Lunatone
Yeah.
Soul Rock, which I love that deck also, and play that too much. And I that is probably better. You're correct. It sets up simpler. To play this deck, it takes patience. Sometimes you need to be willing to not do anything on a turn. Just set up, take a turn with setup, and don't worry about attacking sometimes because that can put you in the best game position. So you need to have a bit of a patient mindset, I think. You need to work with the cards you have, right? Because especially your attack, you're putting most of your hand back into your deck, so you don't have a lot of pieces. Now, if you can't get your Cinchinos or your Inteleon pieces onto the board early enough, then you're in a lot of trouble because then you just have nothing and you're just top decking. And you need a lot of pieces every turn. You usually have to evolve a Malamar, attach an energy and such. But you also do have artillery, which doesn't, it gets used in this deck basically in like Rapid Strike Urshifu and not much else. And artillery is a very powerful card, right? Search for any Rapid Strike card you want, and you can using Rapid Strike energy here. You have the supporters, your Pokemon. So it's useful. You play Scoop Up Net too, so you have that option of scooping up the artillery to get an extra 80 damage with the Remoraid and the artillery. And so you have those decisions as you work through the game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's time to talk about deck building as you mentioned
Yeah.
it a bit earlier. But obviously you need Malamar and then you need artillery, right? Those are the two lines that go in every Rapid Strike deck in addition to probably Spiral Energy,
Mm-hmm.
Karina's Focus, and that's about
Right.
where the list is set.
In psychic energy, usually plays two
Yeah.
basic psychic energy,
Yeah, but
and
then from there it like diverged a lot, right?
it does. I think Scoop Up Net's probably in pretty much every build. The counts would vary. If you're playing the Inteleon engine, you probably want forced nets because you have to keep scooping up your Drizziles to reuse them the next turn. Plus your basic, your Sobbles, are the Rapid Strike Sobble, and you may play the Rapid Strike Inteleon also to have some options with that. Obviously, you could play Manaphy's. Deck number of counts of things are critical as always. Like, do you play 2 Remoraids or 3 Remoraids? Those are big. Do you play like Minccino build? Do you play a 3-3? I like a 3-3 Cinccino line. Do you want to try to get a 4-3, or do you want to try and be really tight with a 3-2 line for extra space? It's those decisions which really make the deck work or not work. And I played with it enough to kind of get that sense.
Yeah, and your preferred build, why do you think Cinccino is better than Inteleon?
Well, it's something I've told you at times. I don't think I've said it here on the podcast. I think often winning and losing games comes down to making the least mistakes. I know I make mistakes. You've probably made at least one mistake in all the games
Yeah,
you've
from
played.
time to time I may like I'd say every like few months I'll make a mistake or something.
Yeah, you're the exception that almost never makes mistakes. But even top players at tournaments, at events over a weekend, they make multiple mistakes. There's very few games without a mistake. There's obviously decisions that could go either way, but often mistakes get made. So less mistakes is more wins. Less decisions means less mistakes, and Chinchino is less decisions. You're like with Chinchino, it's just do I make do before the supporter or after the supporter? That's often the big decision you're making. I gotta say, and I know that's you don't like that. You want more decisions and more complexity, and that can be fun too, but it leads to less consistency. I think more decisions. So
Yeah, I guess. Obviously, I like the Inteleon build more.
hmm
There are really two. There's a third one I'm going to talk about that
yeah,
I actually think might be better than those. But Inteleon, one you're the Sobble, and the one Inteleon, which you may or may not play, the Chilling Reign Inteleon.
right.
They're both rapid strike cards, which is good, right? You want to be
hmm
playing lots of rapid strike cards. When I played Malamar Cinccino, I like Malamar, and then I like draw all these, or I Cinccino and Karina's Focus and Bruno and all that, and draw a bunch of cards. And then I look at my hand, and I've got all these Cinchinos and Minchinos in my hand that can't do damage and aren't helping me.
Right.
And then I lose. And I don't like that feeling.
hmm
I feel like also sometimes losing the resources is kind of like it feels kind of bad to lose some of the resources in your deck.
Yeah.
When you're a single prize deck that's relying on needing so much stuff, notably
hmm
all the energies and Pokemon to attack with. And then also, I think it doesn't do it doesn't allow for a really massive power push on the later turns, unlike or in the earlier turns as well. Unlike the Italian engine with the Drizzles, which allow you to do big power pushes and also big consistency increases, where you can go ahead and search out things like I was gonna say Battle VIP Pass. You can't search that out with Drizzle though, or at least
Not
not
on
turn
not on
one.
turn one when you need it. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can search out anything really, and even with like Fog Crystal, you can search out your energies and your, of course, your Pokemon with Ball Search, and
hmm
then your supporters, which are really important. And so they're like artillery. And you can use multiple per turn, so they give you that boost. And overall, they like since you know you can draw into all these cards and still not see what you need. But with Drizzle and Teleon, you're essentially guaranteed to get what you need. And then also, I think they obviously synergize better with Scoop Up Net, which I really like.
hmm
And then you get the nice buff of being able to play Irida now, which provides a lot of value in Inteleon decks where you're not looking to play another supporter. And so, obviously, in Malamar, you kind of want to play another supporter, something like Cynthia's Ambition, Bruno,
hmm
Karina's. But I think Inteleon Edge opens up to more options, and I think it opens up to more powerful turns, especially in the early game, which is the most important part of the game.
Yeah. Look, Inteleon gets going faster. I mean, I think that's for sure. What I don't like about it though is the strength of the deck actually diminishes as the game goes on because, like the nets you said, are so important, but you can never recover those. So eventually, if you can't scoop up your Drizzile, you're losing engine, you're losing draw. So I think it's a deck that starts strong and weakens, whereas Chinchino's it builds over time, and I like that feeling better. It's a single prize deck. I can fall behind and things. I'm okay with that, and I like having the comeback ability. So that's part of it. And the Chino build is takes less pieces, right? You need less Pokemon. You don't need the nets also as many nets necessarily. So you have room for more of a trainer mix, which I like that with the deck too. I mean, honest with Chinchinos, I look at my list. I play like Great Ball in that. So which again is another very
Bad.
random card that you don't like, but it actually you can't play. To me, I don't want to put in a quick ball or anything that discards because I don't want to do that. So great ball actually works within the deck, and you're usually getting a good piece. And the other thing with this deck is you're recovering pieces, and what you recover and when with Rod and with Rescue Carry is a big piece of the deck too. So that's a very important strategic element as the game goes on. When do you use your Rescue Carrier to get what pieces? Those decisions get you the extra damage or get you set up for the next turn, which is important. So
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's time that I share my
yeah.
story with Malamar. I obviously don't like Malamar, and I haven't played it that much.
hmm
So when I do play it, I usually net deck, as is very common when you aren't as experienced with the deck,
Yep.
and just want to try it out for the first time. So I went over to Limitless, or played out Limitless, looked at the top deck, which is really really like that's where you go for your list too, right?
Oh yeah, it's a good thing to do. Nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, and if you want to like improve and like see some ideas, usually there's nothing too crazy there,
Yep.
but there's just like if you want like a solid list, just go to Play.Limitless. And there are a ton. There are like thousands of lists. So I went to the highest, the top list. I clicked on Malamar,
Mm-hmm.
Rapid Strike Malamar, looked at the highest list, and this was probably when Palkia just came out, so it was like Astral Radiance.
Okay.
And so I looked at the top list, and I was like, obviously there's some new cards added, and so I looked, and it was a Chinchino list. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll try this. But then it also had Irida, so that's an interesting inclusion. It searches for water Pokemon, but it didn't have the Inteleon engine. So I took the list, and it didn't do too well because Irida is pretty bad without Inteleon, and so you'd like Chinchino, and then you draw into your Iridas, and you
Yeah.
just kind of lose. So yeah, I don't, and that was like the best Malamar deck there was. So yeah, I've never had a good experience with Malamar.
Yeah. I mean, it. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously randomness with the deck, so you have to play it enough to get past the randomness. And different decks do suit different styles. So I found it to be enjoyable. I think in some sense it's a cheeky deck. It's a very it's a single prizer. Stage one, as you said, it's not ideal, but potentially you do get those turns now and then with big damage. And for me, those occasional turns with big damage, I get a lot of enjoyment from those. So maybe that just it lifts my enjoyment level beyond probably with the performance of the deck.
Yeah, it's like you're 10 games in, you're like, yes, I gotta win.
Exactly. Yeah, the deck wins okay. But it was funny because we were, preparing for this discussion. I went on to Limitless and took a look at the current lists, and it's not played a lot, unsurprisingly, on online tournaments in Crowns in the new format. But it's played a few times. There's 4 decks that actually have a winning one more than their loss in the tournament. So each one of those, I think, only one game more than their loss. So it not overpowering. But the lists were almost the same as the old list. What they had 2 Inteleon builds, 2 Chinchino builds, but almost the decks had almost not developed at all. It's like time stood still for them from like 6 months ago.
Yeah, but as I said, I think there's a new build of Malamar that
Yeah.
actually is pretty good. I haven't actually tried this out, but it's with the new Curlia, which came out in wait, when did that come out? Did that come out in Silver Tempest? Yeah. So the Curlia, which is the same as Chinchino, except it's well, it does have a bit less health and debatably a worse, well, definitely a worse attack. But you can go ahead and search out the basic Ralts with
Mm-hmm.
your copies of Fog Crystal, which is usually included in Malamar. And so I think that's like a nice buff to it. And
Yep.
you can also use the Glade from what's it? I think it's Astral Radiance that allows you to search for a supporter every turn, which isn't bad. You could even use the Gardevoir, which allows you to draw cards without needing to discard, which is better, obviously. So,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think of that?
I think that's an interesting idea. I think I might want to try it because, as you mentioned, Fog Crystal is a very important card for it and a very useful card, a very powerful card. So trying to build and take advantage of that with it, I think I want to give that a try.
Do you think it would be better than the other builds?
Um, I'm not sure what the count will be, and if the more I see that the difficulty is what count am I going to use because compares to the Cinchino build, which is like a 3/3 Cinchino. So now I'm probably want more than 6 within this line, I would think. So then
Yeah.
it's what am I cutting and how does that work out? That's I'm not sure that it's an interesting question.
Yeah. Do you have anything else? Honestly, I think that's all I have for Malamar. Do you have anything else?
Uh, no, I mean I think Malamar fits under the reasonably effective banner pretty well. It certainly had its day in the sun. It could win. It could even get lucky at a major IRL event and do decently. But it's just it's an okay deck that if you enjoy, play it, and if you don't, you have got a lot of other options there.
Yeah. I guess one other thing, I mentioned this earlier, but there was, I said, the Passimian. Do you know that Passimian?
Yeah, the Rapid Strike one that boosts. It can do replace 20 damage counters if I remember.
Well, 20 does 20
It
damage.
does 20 damage to any Pokemon. Is that correct?
Yeah, and then if its ability, right, but
It boosts
boost
damage to
damage
the bench, and it's a rapid
benched,
strike card.
yeah, benched full box, I think. So
Yes.
essentially, you could stick one of your what are they, spiral energies on
Right.
it, and then you can be hitting for a 50 snipe instead of playing boss's orders. You have the sniping capability, but do you think that's like ever worth it or not really?
Have tried it, I think, at times, but I've taken it out. The biggest value it has, it's a rapid strike card, and you just toss it back into the deck when you attack. It does give the option of knocking something out if you come up short and they retreat to the bench, but my experience with it is it didn't actually work often enough to make it worth the deck space.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then, like, I do think you should probably run boss orders, or at the very least, you probably need to run escape rope because Malamar has a bigger
Hmm.
G cost and stuff, and kind of go wrong there. But
Yeah.
like, you don't run boss? Do you run rope?
I I in my Chinchino build I don't have any switch other than I have the stadium
Yeah,
Tower Water. So in that one I think I run three in that
yeah,
one. So I run more in the Inteleon build, which only has one Tower Waters. I run rope in that, which
yeah.
switches
And
for me.
you run that in those as well.
Yeah, and obviously since the Inteleon the Drizziles can pull that out when needed, so it makes a lot more sense. It's definitely included in the Inteleon engine, I think.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's it
Yep.
for Malamar, and I'm glad to be done with that. Now to move on to in my opinion, some better design cards. The tag team GXs that have rotated a little some months ago, but still a fond place in my heart, and I think in yours as well.
Yeah, I mean, we both started when they were out, kind of right before Sword and Shield came. Kind of late Sun and Moon is when we both kind of started playing in that
No,
first.
we started when Sword and Shield was out,
Okay,
or you guys started more seriously
more
when Sword and
serious.
Shield
We
was out.
started a little, I think, a little bit before, and then got serious that first year with Sword and Shield. But obviously, the tag teams were a big part of things still.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with the at the very beginning with the first tag team GX and the reveal of the mechanic with Pikachu and Zekrom, which is probably it's not too badly designed, but when people saw it, they were like, "Wow, this is absurdly overpowered." I remember PCG Radio making a video on this, which is actually pretty funny, covering this card as it got revealed at Worlds. It was like a big thing,
Mm.
saying, and if you don't know him, he's like a news Pokemon TCG channel. But he was saying this card's so good. This is like the kind of card that your friend makes a custom card and shows it to you, and you're like, this is really cool, but it can't ever be in the game because it's too overpowered. And he said that's what this looked like. So, what it does, its first attack, its attacks are somewhat expensive, but there are a number of options to allow you to help pay it. Its first attack accelerated lightning energy and hit a solid damage output, 150 for three. Also had a massive 240 HP, which now I'm looking at, and it doesn't seem that massive.
Right,
But then
but
also its GX attack did 200 for three, very big, and then or big back then. And then
yeah.
if this Pokemon has three extra energy, so six energy, it does 200 plus a 170 snipe to one of your opponent's bench, which isn't that hard to pay off if you've used your first attack.
Right. Yeah. Wait, what was that Pokemon again? That was
Pikachu and Zekrom.
Zekrom, Pikarom, right? Which stayed as a good, a quality card for a while, right? Pikarom,
Yeah, it was probably good till it rotated.
which is surprising, especially because it's 240 HP, which, as you said, was considered big at the time. But by the time it was getting near the end, 240 HP for three was ridiculously low in HP. You
Yeah,
know,
it's like it's 100 HP less than Eternatus, which is also three prizes. So that's just crazy.
right? And it's just barely more than like Zashi and Zamazenta, but giving up an
Yeah.
extra prize. So it made it, but it was still successful. Now I never actually played Pikarom because I just, from my standpoint, it was too expensive to get. But you played it some, right?
I played it a little. I certainly I got it. So I've never been a big fan of this card, not in the way it's designed. I think its design's pretty solid. But I never looked at it as particularly strong. In fact, I believe I've said on numerous occasions to you, it auto loses every matchup. So,
Right. While it was going
which
on to win event after event at the same time.
Yes, yes. So, as I said, its stats looked low, but at the time, as I said, they're big. They were bigger than the Stage 2 GXs, which is just crazy. Like
Mm,
they required so much work, and then Pikarom just is better than them as a basic. Sure,
yeah.
giving up one more prize is bad, but for being a stronger than a Stage 2, that's very good. But when you look at some later ones, it trades badly and in prizes, and then with the Vs and V Maxes, it trades pretty badly. Its damage output isn't that high, and it was a bit uh, weird of a deck. It revolved
Mm,
around specifically we both played with tag team being the oldest set in the format. So
yep.
this was uh, after that rotation. So this was when stuff like Thunder Mountain and Electro Power and Volkner wasn't that good, but when those types of cards had rotated, so
Mm,
Pikarom just wasn't able to hit as high of a value. With Electro Power, Thunder Mountain, Pikarom looked really strong, but without them, it just seemed a bit to become a bit short. It really came down to a number of control aspects,
yeah.
including what is not my favorite card, Crushing Hammer, was a very important part of this deck.
Yeah, and I think reset stamp too, right? If I recall, it was one of those decks that would try to get you'd have taken 5 prizes and then have to finish off a Pika Rom, so essentially draw out 8 prizes, but they could reset you stamp down to 1 card in hand, so it gave a good comeback mechanic.
Yeah, Reset Stamp was played in that deck. A lot of Marnies were played in that deck.
Hmm.
One of the world's, I think, a world's winning deck was Pikarom Judge, which is like Pikarom with Judge to disrupt. So it's always been focused around disruption because it actually hasn't been able to stand up to quite the power level. There are a few other. Obviously, this is the first one we're talking about, so it's like very it's hard to judge in a vacuum. There are a
Hmm.
number of other, notably Raichu and Alolan Raichu. I guess we can talk about that now. That came out in Unified Minds, I believe. So 2 sets later, nice buff with
Well,
the
do you
addition
want
of.
to talk about Gengar and Mimikyu? If you want to,
I think we'll
you want
talk
to save
about
that.
this. Yeah, we'll talk about
Okay.
realistically Raichu and Alolan Raichu only stands alongside the Pikarom. It came out in 2 later sets, but
Okay.
um, it was it helped with the disruption aspect of Pikarom as well as Bolt on V was a very important part of that being your engine, and that was one of the few decks that hadn't well, okay, it wasn't one of the few decks that hadn't a setup attack, but it was one of the few decks that had a setup attack that wasn't game breaking, I'll say. So yeah.
Yeah, Raichu and Alolan Raichu. So 260 HP, tandem shock 80. If it swings into active, another 80, and they're paralyzed. I mean, that's not big damage for 3 energy on such a 3 prize Pokemon.
Yeah, but the paralysis is really big, and that's where the reset Sam crushing hammers. All of a sudden, you've like lost all your energy, all your cards, and you're paralyzed, and then that's how they'd win.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but as you said, the damage output's relatively low. Its GX attack's pretty bad as well. You wouldn't really use it too often. You'd use it some because it's okay. It's good damage output, I guess, but it's not
Yeah.
that good. And then also Bolt on V could get to big damage, but really Pikarom was the star of the show. But
Yeah.
it set the scene for some very powerful Pokemon. And as I said, they've only gotten more powerful from here. But do you want to talk about Gengar Mimikyu?
Yeah, I'll mention that. But then you're the one that played it more.
Yeah.
It's a psychic Pokemon. And its GX attack probably is what I remember it for. Horror House. For 1 energy, your opponent can't play any cards from hand the next turn. So essentially, your opponent can't do anything. It is, and if they're not already set up to hit into you, they're doing nothing. So you kind of get back-to-back turns to get things going. For a second energy, then you could each player draw till you have 7, but that wasn't necessarily something that you wanted to do. And then the attack was okay, but it was often used in other decks, right?
Yeah. So I played. Yeah, we'll get to that later, but I guess I'll talk about one of the powerful pairings of this. A bit traumatic for some players, certainly myself included. the reason I think that I did not make top or excuse me, part of the reason I did not make top cut, I believe, of Players Cup, um, and I'll show you the other card. Gengar Mimikyu was very good.
Hmm.
Um, and then another, I'd say, arguably the most problematic tag team, and highlights one of the flaws of Pokemon's design. Unfortunately, Trevenant and Dusknoir
Hmm.
GX. So this one, we're a health, but for 3 Psychic, choose 2 random cards in your opponent's hand, um, and then they shuffle them into the deck. But you also do 150 damage, so pretty solid damage output. And then Amazing Disruption. It has an okay GX stack, but not that good. And then really you'd use what's it called? You'd use Gengar Mimikyu to set up,
Yeah.
and then Trevenant and Dusknoir to just keep hitting into them, and then well, you'd Marnie, Trevenant, Dusknoir, Marnie, Trevenant, Dusknoir, so they'd have like almost no cards to work with every turn,
Yeah.
and essentially not be able to play the game at all. I lost like one of my rounds in the Pog Championship
Hmm.
due to that because I wasn't able to play any cards pretty much all game. And also at the time of these coming out, Malamar, the other Malamar, the psychic one
Hmm.
from Forbidden Light, Accelerating Energy, allowed this to be set up better. That was a solid deck, I guess. And another iconically underwhelming Malamar, I guess. And not bad, but not living up to expectations.
Yeah.
And then this was just super annoying. But the big problem I highlight that I don't like about it, that persists, is that it's a promo exclusive, so it's super expensive and
Mm.
pretty unobtainable.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is a promo only, so it's very difficult to get. I know you're not a fan of live. I think live will make access to cards like this easier though, because it's just going to be based on rarity, so it's not supply demand. So a card like this becomes more obtainable, which is a plus.
Yeah, have you played against this on the expanded ladder in live?
I've avoided the expanded ladder on live as I think we all should be at now. I mean, these cards, though, it just made playing against these decks to me was always a very unpleasant experience. So,
Yeah, they're as I said, traumatic of it for me. They're not enjoyable and um very obnoxious, very straightforward as well. One of the
mhm.
problems of the tag teams that people said about tag teams and VMAXs, not just the three prizes, but also the fact that they're just super generic, not generic, but boring, just hit, and then game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are some exceptions to that we'll see, but yeah, that was true for a lot of things with
Yeah,
it.
and all of them were just kind of. I was gonna say they're always just attacking, but that's kind of true of Pokemon as a whole. You're attacking. It's an attacking game, but yeah, a few people criticize them for being boring, and in some sense they were. But what's the next one? Do you want to talk about here?
All right, looking through as I'm scrolling through the order, so um, I didn't quite.
There are a few here you played. There's Reshizard. Do you want to talk about
Yeah,
that one?
I looking through. That's the next one to hit right chronologically. So Reshazard, obviously, Welder was a big thing at that point when like the early days of Sword and Shield. Welder was still around. Attach up to 2 energy from hand to a bench Pokemon. Draw 3 cards. A super powerful card.
Well, to any Pokemon,
To any Pokemon. I'm
which
sorry, you're right. Basic
even
fire
better.
energy to any. Oh, that's right. It didn't have to be just the benched,
Yeah.
right? So even better. And probably a bit of an overpowered card, which is why I don't think they're going to do that card again. But and a deck that Welder, of course, was very inconsistent, but this with Reshazard and maybe a few other pieces, you could just run over your opponents, especially if you went second and were able to set up with it. You would you have the GX attack double blaze for 3 energy. It does 200 damage, and so if you had the energy in the Welder turn one, you got your 3 energy, do 200 damage at 270 HP. You're not getting knocked out. You attach an energy the next turn. Now you're doing 230 for Flare Strike. Or if they attack into you and the numbers work out right, you could outrage, which was 30 plus 10 per damage counter. So, but now you're doing 200 turn one, 230 turn two, and your opponent's just kind of crying because they have no chance at that point.
Yeah, and in fact, we neither of us really played during this time, but before Sword and Shield came out,
Mm-hmm.
the rulings were slightly different. You could play a supporter turn one.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd Welder turn one going first, Welder turn two going first, and turn two, you're hitting going first. So essentially your opponent doesn't have a chance to evolve. They haven't had a chance to do much of anything.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you're hitting 300 damage and your opponent just like conceding. So that wasn't actually that good. You wouldn't necessarily need to do 300 before your opponents had a chance to do anything, much of anything. But yeah, it's amazingly powerful. You played in some toolbox decks as well, Welder toolbox, right?
Right. Yeah. Welder. You could maybe have Blacephalon as a single prize attacker. Some other options. Cramorant V hitting it was 160 to any Pokemon, right, for 3 energy.
Yep.
Could take advantage of Welder. So yeah, it was nice. It lent itself to some different boxes. Welder though was always inconsistent. So it was, when it worked, it was great. Sometimes you wouldn't get the energies in hand to do the damage you need. But at 270 HP, a very strong number there, and doing 200, 230 damage, and it was huge. The other tag team you could pair it with, I'll mention, is Charizard and Braixen. That's an okay one. You might pair that in as a second tag team sometimes.
Yeah. One other thing to say about Reshizard,
Mm-hmm.
this embodies, in my eyes, I'm not sure if I call this power creep, but the fact that it's better than Pikarom, and why I said
Mm-hmm.
Pikarom loses every matchup, auto loses every matchup. Flare Strike, Ascent, it doesn't quite one-shot Pikarom or stuff like Gengar Mimikyu, but with you just need 10 more, which you can key at in a number of ways. The decks that played Reshizard certainly had many ways of doing that. Galarian
Yep.
Zigzagoon was probably the most common way. And then you could also do Vitality Band, but at that point you're just essentially one-shotting these three prize Pokemon, which is something people did not like at all because they're the game lasted 3 turns and I haven't done anything and now I've lost. So people understandably didn't like that. I personally, I like I either like really slow decks or really fast decks.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say really slow, I mean 100-turn games. But fast, I want to play if the game goes longer than 5 turns or less than 50, I'm not happy.
Yeah, I mean the nice things about this is it did lend itself to a toolbox like called kind of Tempo Zard, where we have bunch of different pieces you could do. So that's useful, interesting. And then the other build to Reshizard, where it would typically use Jirachi to help draw and get you the pieces you need. You leave out Jirachi, then you make it a greens deck, a greens exploration, where you search for 2 cards, correct, with greens from your deck, as long as you
Trainers.
two trainers, any 2 trainers. Yeah, sorry. As long as you have no Pokemon with abilities in play. So that was kind of the other way to play some of these fire cards.
Yeah, and also fire type was realistically the undisputed best type
Mm-hmm.
of this year. There was Reshizard was the best fire Pokemon other than debatably the baby Blacephalon, but
Yep.
in Volcanion. But I say this is better. In addition to Welder and then Fire Crystal, what was it? The Stadium Giant Hearth, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so really you just have this amazing package. We just run through stuff, mostly Welder and Reshizard. But
Yep.
yeah, Fire was absurdly good, and I think the undisputed GOAT of that year in terms of power. And then the Worlds, I think the Worlds deck list that they showed, 3 of the 4 deck lists were Welder decks, which is pretty absurd.
Yeah, had the best Pokemon and the best trainers. I think really it was loaded.
Yeah, but another one I imagine you want to talk about is Luke Metal, right?
Yeah, that was a deck I enjoyed playing. Yeah, Lucario Melmetal. 260 HP, not as big as Reshizard, but it had the full metal wall. Its GX attack, which if you had 2 energy, which could be, I believe, of any type,
Yep.
your metal Pokemon take 30 less damage. That was just for 1 energy, but then with the second energy, which you usually want to take advantage of this, your opponent would discard all energy from their active Pokemon. So you're now taking 30 less damage, and your opponent just lost all their energy. So, because you'd wait till they had the active Pokemon with the energy that you would set them back a couple turns with it. You're not taking damage. You had metal goggles to reduce damage, and such. So you had a number of pieces to make it happen. This was a slow wall deck, and it worked well within that. And this, as a metal Pokemon, then when we were playing, Zacian and Zamazenta are out. So Zacian a big attacker, Zamazenta a little bit wally, and so you had these pieces with Metal Saucer and stuff to make a deck work. And we had the Lily's Pokédoll, right, which was an item, right? When you played it, it went onto your bench, and if your opponent knocked it out, they took no prizes, but also you could remove it from play, right, and go back in your deck. So it gave free switching also if it was in your active. So it was some nice pieces to work with.
Yeah, I think this is a deck I didn't play as much as you, but it was a very fun deck.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty slow one. You could play it
Yeah.
with the tag call engine as well, right?
Yeah, I liked it for that. The tag call, which searched for two tag team cards, and then you had the tag team supporters that were pretty good. But since you could get them with tag call, you could choose which two cards you needed at a given time and kind of get things set up pretty well. Get a
Yeah.
stadium and such energies and such.
Yeah, so I'd say a pretty cool card. Speaking of the tag call engine, it didn't see too much play, but actually at the very end of its life, so in terms of the tag team cards,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about this the Pokemon, but the supporters, there's well, okay, so there was I believe six of them, but technically seven. Um, so the big three, there was Guzman Hala, which was good at search for
Mm-hmm.
support Special Energy Stadium. Sorry, Special Energy Stadium tool. Not anything amazing, but it was good in some decks. Then we
Yeah.
also saw Cynthia Caitlyn. Do you know which one it was?
Cynthia and Caitlin are yeah, or Sinlin for short.
Okay. So that would allow you to draw some cards and then also recover support is pretty solid, especially in a slower deck.
Yep.
Not the strongest, but not bad. And then we also saw Mallow and Lana, a really nice healing and switching card, which is quite frankly amazing. That was great in League Metal, right?
Right, Luke Metal being very tanky. Your opponents can't one shot your healing off. They'd start to do damage, and then you'd use Malo and Lana, and you'd heal off 120 when you switched. So it was just again it worked. It fit together pretty well as a set.
Yeah, and then there were three other ones. I think there were red and blue, which were bad. There were
Yeah, red and blue, Misty and Lorelei,
yeah,
which I'm
that one
not.
was also bad. And then what was the
Uh,
last? Oh, and then yes, the classic, which is the controversial one, I should say. Um, Below and Bryson Man,
yeah.
a debatably very powerful milling card that got banned. So it was one of the first cards banned in a long time, and it wasn't even like that good. I wouldn't say it was the best card in the format. Was it good? I don't know. It allowed you some bench disruption. People,
Mm-hmm.
I like somewhat of a conspiracy theory that it was banned. Well, it was banned around the time Eternus VMAX came out, right before that, and it
Mm-hmm.
hard counted Eternus VMAX, and people were like, Pokemon wants to make their big expensive new card really good, so they're gonna ban the counter to it. Was that true? Probably not, but it was banned.
Yeah.
So out of the six, which isn't a lot, two of them were hot trash. Three of them were pretty solid but situational, and one was
Mm-hmm.
banned. So we got a replacement a few months, maybe like a month before it rotated, which was kind of strange, meaning that we got this card for a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But a replacement to Blob and Bryson, man, we got Sabrina and Bryson, which was completely different.
Yeah, not
Which
even
was
related, which was strange.
yeah, and also a promo exclusive. It was just all around strange, but it was really crazy. I searched for like three Pokemon of different types and like two energies of different types, was it?
Yeah,
Something like
search your
that.
deck for two basic energy cards was the first one, and then with these supporters, you always had an option. With this one, you had to discard five cards, which was a heavy price to pay, and then you search for up to three Pokemon of different types. So, a strange thing. There's not many decks that are going to want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, but the one deck that did was this dark box style deck focused around, I guess, Greninja and Zoroark GX, which just wanted to flood the board with dark energy.
Mm-hmm.
One notable thing is that obviously the tag teams aren't in standard anymore, but they are very good in expanded because they're just some of the best cards we've ever seen. Very strong basics.
Yep.
And Greninja and Zoroark is one of the best. right? So it's an interesting one, not too much to note, but I think it deserves a mention.
Yeah, yeah, it's a useful card, and it's one you played a little bit, right?
Um,
Or not really?
yeah, I played. Okay, so everyone knows Lugia V-Star, I'm assuming, where you use your V-Star power to set up your Lugias. So there was a similar deck. So Greninja's RX GX attack is somewhat similar, and it puts Dark Pokemon onto your bench. So you'd put Incineroar GX, the build I played, which was bad, by the way. I wouldn't really recommend this. But it certainly is, I'd say, a video deck one that's kind of funny.
Hmm.
Not horrible, kind of high rolly, but you put two Incineroar GXs onto your bench that accelerate Dark Energy to themselves, and then because your attack is based off of Dark Energy attached to all your Pokemon, all of a sudden you're just hitting the next turn. You're hitting like I got locked out of
I've
Pokemon as
been
we've been
talking too long.
chatting for a while. Yeah, but you'd be hitting like 120 extra damage the next turn, which is just absurd.
Yeah,
But overall, that was kind of bad.
yeah. I mean, you talked me into trying that deck, and as I recall, when you say somewhat high roly, I think that's a gross under exaggeration. It was super high roly, but when it worked, you just obliterated your opponent. So it was kind of fun for that, like every fifth game or something when it worked. It was fun type
Yeah, I
thing.
think it involved an energy switch clear and Moltres play at turn one. So yeah, that was not amazing.
Yeah.
But it was fun. But then I think there's another one from this set. This set was very good. Probably one of my favorite sets of all time. Really all the tag teams in here were pretty solid. But then Gardevoir and Sylveon GX, Tag Team GX. This saw play at before like that rotation.
Hmm.
Uh, it's really the last stand for Fairy. There weren't many Fairy cards printed this year, but this one was the best. It suffered greatly when Metal became really good with Zacian V, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about a bit more. As you said, Luke Metal though played that. That was bad for Guardian. But it was a solid Fairy deck and a Greens
Yeah.
Exploration deck as well.
Yeah. It's not one I have played, but I know it was certainly one of the few good fairy options that were around back then. So
Yeah, so now we got the next set, Unified Minds, and we're taking a bit of a slow road, but this is a nice, I think it's a nice walkthrough of remembering the history of the
back in
tag
the
teams, which
old
are pretty
days,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're Pokemon boomers now, so
Even you
um,
are now too, huh?
yes, I am. But I'm gonna look at this set, which has there are a few. This was not overall as influential. We see that Raichu and Alolan Raichu, which we mentioned earlier with Pikarom, it was a helper to that, which was solid. We also see Umbreon and Darkrai, and then with Mega Sableye and Tyranitar, which are a big part of. Well, Umbreon and Darkrai was a big part of that. Sabrina and Bryson, Dark Box with all that like weird stuff in it. And then we also see Guillotine and Garchomp, a tech card sometimes played. Um, but Violet Executor here was just
Hmm.
amazing. As well, okay, and expanded is kind of overpowered and not fun because it's like it stops you from doing anything with the Vileplumes. But in standard, you play it with Rillaboom and you'd have a fun little deck. Did you ever play that or not?
No, I didn't really play that one. So, um,
Yeah, it looked fun though. Where you do you know how that deck worked?
no, I really don't. I gotta say.
Okay, so Valorant and the Lone Executor has, I think, in my opinion, a better take on Lugia V-Star's V-Star
Hmm.
power because it actually encourages one, some versatility, but two, it's just more interesting for a free attack, which is interesting. Search your deck. Pretty much, you take a grass Pokemon
Hmm.
or a Pokemon on your bench, evolve it. That's grass, fully evolve it. But you search your deck for the stage one, stage two, and
Yeah.
put it onto that. And so you get Rillaboom. You accelerate to your Rowlet Executor or some other attackers with Rillaboom. You played Delmise. You played Delmise. Did you ever put this in or not? Did you never like have
No, I
this with
never
Delmise?
had this, and by the time I was playing Rillaboom and Delmise, I don't. This had rotated from
Okay,
standard.
yeah. But this was solid. Also, its GX attack. Wow, this was insane. Tropical Arrow GX 300 or
Hmm.
200 for three. Pretty common in most of these.
Yeah.
But then if you have the extra three energy, again very common. But your opponent shuffles all energy attached to all their Pokemon into their deck. So
Yeah.
this was just like a stronger version of Luke Metal's attack that was super disruptive,
Hmm.
notably against Pikachu and Zekrom. That's why I say like Pikachu and Zekrom loses to everything. You use your GX, your attack with Pikachu and Zekrom, and they shuffle all your energy back into your deck, and then you lose. So, um, but yeah, it was pretty good, but not too amazing. And also, as we said, Fire was so good. So Rowlet and Executor just
Yeah.
drowning out there.
Yeah, I mean, there were a number of games where it was kind of this game of standoff of who would time the GX attacks, right? Because these GX attacks like this are so disruptive, right? You had to time it just right, but your opponent knows what you're trying to do. So that was kind of, to the extent the games were interesting, I think that was part of what made them interesting.
Yeah, and then also Slowduck, Slowpoke, and Psyduck was a funny, one of the funniest tag teams, probably the funniest, kind of bad, not horrible.
Yeah.
And then we also we saw Espeon Deoxys, but this actually, would you believe it, won the World Championship in 2019? But that is thanks to the great, in my opinion, one of the best cards of all time, and certainly one of the most fun cards of all time, a Mewtwo and Mew GX with no normal attacks. It
Yeah.
has a GX attack that does, again, 200 for 3. Then if you have an extra energy, you heal all damage from all your Pokemon. Is that good? Yeah, yeah, it's not bad. Would you use it though?
Probably
No,
not,
because
right?
yeah, it has the ability Perfection, which they have never gotten an ability name more right. This
Yeah.
one allows you to copy any GXs or EXs from your bench or your discard pile. This means, notably, you can copy any stage 2 EX or stage 1 EX. You don't need to evolve it.
Right.
And then you can just copy. You need their energy, but it was so much fun. And you played this too, right?
I did. I did play it a little bit, not as much as you did, and it is fun. It's having those options is great. And like you said, any of the evolving GXs, you just had to get it in the discard, and you were good to go with it. The current Mew VMAX kind of is like this, except you have so many more options with this GX that it's just much more interesting to play. I think.
Yeah, and in my opinion, we've seen a lot of them used with abilities that allow you to copy attacks. This is, uh, I want to say this is the best designed. There's the really old Mew, which was super good.
Hmm.
I have no idea how good it was. I think it was like blatantly overpowered, if I remember. And there's a newer one that was a bit less overpowered, but I don't know. I think that was a lot. A lot of the older ones I don't really know too much about, and they're during in my opinion, the dark age of Pokemon, where all the rulings are weird, and it
Yeah.
was a much smaller game. Doesn't mean they were badly designed, but I generally focus on Black and White on, and certainly this is an amazing rendition of the toolbox style deck. So you'd have
Yep.
Mewtwo Mew. Notably, one of the best ones, as I said, Welder was super
Hmm.
dominant. That's what actually won the World Championships this year with Mewtwo and Mew. So you'd have Mewtwo and Mew. As I said, Espeon and Deoxys was in that deck, as well as Reshiram and Charizard, as well as Heatran GX, as well as just so many different Pokemon that
Hmm.
were all really strong. You could play this in so many different builds. I've been talking about all these different Pokemon, pretty much all these tag teams saw play in Toolbox Mewtwo and Mew decks because it was so good. There was a Pikachu and Zekrom Mewtwo and Mew deck. There is Grass Mewtwo and Mew deck. There's the
Yep.
Dark deck that I kept referring to was a Mewtwo and Mew deck. Really, if you want to play something, if you want to just have fun, play a really cool deck, play Mewtwo and Mew. It would be so strong. It had a few weaknesses, notably its actual weakness, Psychic type,
Hmm.
but that could be countered because you had Jirachi GX, and then
Hmm.
also you had the other weakness of having the ability turned off, which is really bad for you because, as I said, you don't have any regular attacks, but that can be turned off by either Path to the Peak or Power Plant. But
Yep.
overall, it was just so fun, and it could escape those counters. That was actually this is a Pokemon that works really nicely with counters.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty good designed deck card. Part of why I think it works is it takes the energy of the attack you're copying. So you had to have a focus with the deck of what by energy type. Like, are you going to use fire with welder? Are you going to use grass? You can't just throw in all the different types because you probably weren't going to get the energy cost you needed.
Yeah, that's kind of true. There are a few different builds in expanded. Well, I guess I'll talk about standard first.
Hmm.
The build I played was Welder, and then you
Yep.
could put in Aurora energy. So you could,
Yeah.
if you just had, say, Psychic Colorless, Colorless, or like watercolors colors or whatever that you're copying, you could
Hmm.
pull this off. You had a number of stage 2s in Incineroar GX, which I mentioned earlier, being bad. It's not bad with its GX attack. If you're copying it with Mewtwo Mew, you'd be hitting like 1,000 damage, which is pretty crazy. Certainly better than Miraculous Duo. And then Vileplume GX coming in pretty good. There were some others that I don't really remember. But overall, it's insane. And then expanded, you have access to EXs as well, which honestly, most of them aren't that good. But
Yeah.
you also have access to more GXs. And then you have Electro GX, as well as some others related to it, where you can accelerate like all the special energy to it. Like imagine if you had Mewtwo Mew GX with Archeops Lugia, that would be insane because you could be doing anything anytime.
Yeah, it was a very good card, and probably part of what makes the tag team something that one can think of fondly is maybe a card like this.
Yeah, this is my favorite card ever, I think. It's hard. It's not my favorite deck ever, but it encouraged creativity in a way that I think only one other tag team did, which we'll get to later, although I'm sure many people will disagree with me on that one. And then,
Yeah.
but this one, I think everyone loved. Certainly, some people didn't like the overall philosophy of Mewtwo Mew, but even they, if they played Mewtwo Mew some, they it's fun to play and definitely diverged from that idea that you're just doing the one attack over and over. It
Hmm.
was so unique. You could play it. Everyone could personalize it, and it wasn't hard to personalize either. It was so fun.
Yeah, it was expensive though. So the whole getting a Mewtwo Mew GX was not easy in that regard though.
Well, most of them were all the good ones were expensive though.
Right. So that was the one difficulty. You just had to get the resources to get it, but then you had a lot of options. So yep,
Yeah, I think you and I both. This was earlier when we were playing, so we had way less resources, notably
that's
like
true.
less take hits, less knowledge of how to trade. So I
Hmm.
think we struggled more to get it. But I think stuff like pretty much like Arceus, Lugia, Palkia, they're all like, about as difficult to get.
Yeah, I mean, once I think with PTCGO, you've been playing for a year, you've got the resources and the knowledge to access the decks and cards you're going to want to get probably. But first 6 months, things like this are just out of reach. I think.
Yeah, at least for the set.
Yeah, unless you of course want to just fork over a lot of money, which we don't want
A
to
lot of
do.
people, yeah, a lot of people do that. Not us though. So I think it's time to talk about the last set. Then there are only four
Hmm.
years of tech or four sets of tech teams, 1 year.
Yeah.
I guess we'll talk about Venusaur and Snivy. Pretty underwhelming. Saw Niche play in some weird stuff. Um, that isn't really worth mentioning. Charizard and Braixen we mentioned earlier as a
Yeah.
fire option. Blastoise and Piplup just pretty bad. We see the water ones here just being very weak. I think we skipped over another one. They're all kind of like silly. This is the least silly, but also probably the worst. Solgaleo and Lunala. Again, this is so insanely powerful. It's kind of like Reshizard. It can literally become invincible. In fact, it makes all your Pokemon invincible. Yeah, still didn't see any play. So that's the extent of the power level at this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty cool. The baby trio, one of the iconically bad ones, but with its Supreme Tough Puff GX attack, you take another turn. So,
Hmm.
what does this remind you of?
This is the Jigglypuff from Rapid Strike.
What?
Well, this is you take another turn. What
Wait, what?
what are you
You mean
saying?
meta?
You're talking what's that back to back turns here? I mean jump
Yeah.
bluff, or you're talking
No,
Dialga?
that's yeah, Dialga.
Okay, yeah,
With its GX, with its V-Star attack, letting you take another turn.
yeah.
Except this says one, it doesn't actually do any damage. So, just taking another turn isn't particularly good,
Hmm.
especially with fairy. Fairies was pretty bad. And this card was pretty bad. But if this Pokemon has 16 fairy energy, which is pretty absurd,
Yeah,
um, yeah, like I'm gonna say pretty absurd. This is like that's actually absurd. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do this to me, and I didn't play this ever because it was bad. But your opponent
yeah,
shuffles all their bench Pokemon and all kinds of attach them into their deck. So you'd destroy their whole bench, and then you would try to use Rolling Panic, which only does 120 damage. That's really bad.
yeah.
In addition to, but if you KO them, you just win. If you didn't KO them, you'd probably just lose. And obviously this is absurd to set up, but there was this funny setup where you use the was it the hat? No, it wasn't the hat trio. It was the something girls. I don't remember. There's these like four
Okay.
cards that you do this like absurd combination. I think you played like you had this crazy combo where you played like 9 supporters in one turn, and you need to get lucky. But it was
Yeah.
pretty funny. Do you know what they're called?
No, I don't. I mean, this is a card that you look at it, it's just made for content creators to make that video of that one game and like 50 games where it works, and you say, here it is.
Yeah, this one was funny. It's pretty bad, but that's fine.
I
And
will ask you a
then
question, though, and I don't know if you know, but it says you skip the between turn step. So does that mean you don't draw or anything like that?
you draw.
You do. Okay.
I'm pretty sure. What's it say? I think that's the between turn, which I believe was renamed.
Does that mean you don't burn and poison
Yeah,
if
I
they're in
think it
effect?
means you don't burn poison. Um, I don't.
That's
What's that
fine.
called? I think it's the. I don't remember what it's called, but there's a term for it. But yeah, I believe it skips that.
Okay. That's fine.
And yeah, and then we saw what people thought was going to be the end of Pikarom, Megalopunny, and Jigglypuff, which was not the end of them. And then we also saw Nadeland, Guzzlord, moderately interesting. Another Pokemon
Hmm.
that was really funny. It's a GX attack let you just like take prize cards, which is pretty absurd. Um, and then we got the two that I think are really, really noteworthy. One of these, I'm sure you, a common fossil, have heard of, which is ADP. And then one of which you have
Yep.
not heard of as much, Reshiram and Zekrom.
Yes, both dragon Pokemon, one being the iconic one, which you played a lot, and I didn't play a lot.
Yeah. But Reshiram and let's talk about Reshiram and
Yeah,
Zekrom first. What do you know about this card? Like what's your experience with this card?
my experience with this card is basically zero. So as I look at it, I see fire and lightning, and I'm kind of looking through it. Basically, didn't play it, and I honestly don't recall playing against it either.
Yeah, and that would be correct. I think that's most players' experience, especially if you weren't around for the when this card came out, which I was not either.
Yeah.
But looking back, this is quite possibly the biggest flop card ever. Well, I don't know if that's true, but looking at its attack here, it looks pretty solid. You see 270 HP, essentially no weakness as well, which
Right.
is we'll
Right. It
get
was
to
very
later.
very weak, but there wasn't much fairy.
Yeah. And Fair was weak to metal as well, so that was pretty irrelevant.
Hmm.
Um, but it's attack Fabled Flare Bolts. And by the way, Reshiram and Zekrom are two of my favorite Pokemon, so this looks
Hmm.
awesome. Discard up to 3 in any combination of basic Fire and basic Lightning from your bench Pokemon. This does 90 for each card discarded. So discard 3, that's 270. That's
Yep.
amazing, right? No other tag teams really reach that, so that's amazing. Fire, Lightning, attack. So if you want to do that, you need 3 on your bench, 2 on your active. That's clearly awkward. Well, keep in mind that Fire and Lightning were the two like best types, right?
Right. You
Yeah,
have Welder, and at 270 HP, it's probably not getting knocked out, and it doesn't lose its energy. So you have, if you can set it up, you can stream attacks with it too.
yeah, and you also have you had Tapu Koko Prism Star as well, right? Which is very
Right.
good.
Yep. To get some energy on too. Yes.
Yeah, so people were like, "This is insane," because it, like, notably Welder. Welder is just so good, and this
Yep.
just capitalized. It's not as absurd as being able to set Flan where you need like 10 fire energy, and then which was doable, right?
Hmm.
You'd hit those 10 energy turns,
Yep.
right?
I loved it. I enjoyed Baby Lucephalon. It was a lot of fun, and you could get those turns, which are fun.
Yeah, but this was more doable than that,
Yep.
especially with like a turn of setup. You could use all those things that you use to set up Pikarom or those things you set up Welder decks. You
Yep.
could combine them together or just use one or the other. You'd want to focus more on one. And then there's
Hmm.
also supporter card Ends Resolve, which was oh, I think it discarded the top 6 cards of your deck and accelerated any energy there to your bench
Mm.
dragon Pokemon. I think it wasn't. Can you pull it up? Or I can pull it up.
What was it? Ends.
It's Ends Resolve in Cosmic Eclipse. But it was a it didn't look great, but it didn't look horrible.
Trying to
If you
find.
found it,
I have not. Cosmic Eclipse. You said.
I'll find it.
All right. Yeah. Sorry.
Um, but this is
Okay,
obviously
ends
this
result. Discard the top six of
finally.
your deck. If any of those cards are basic energy, attach them to one of your benched dragon Pokemon.
Yeah, so that's
So
obviously not amazing, but you had synergies with like Oranguru and stuff.
yeah,
So people were like, this is going to be insane. And also it's GX tech. And so this is where we saw some of the interesting tag team GXs attacks. All of them, right? They had an energy cost, and then you'd pay more to like do more, right?
yes, yep,
So this one did 170 to one of your opponent's Pokemon benched for Fire, Lightning. Not crazy to power up by any means. And if you played End
right,
Resolve this turn, it does 170 snipe to two bench, which is insane. Like this was so good. It's guaranteed four prizes when everyone was running like Dedenne GX in every deck. It
right.
just like it just murders your opponent's side of the board, and it's so brutal. You can just like pretty much this deck look like it could KO anything anytime,
Hmm.
which is crazy. And people are hyping this up so much, and I'm hyping it up so much. And as you said, no one played it, or people, no one played it a few like a month after it came out
Right.
because it flopped so hard. It was so hype. It was hyped way more than any other card in the set. Probably way more hyped than any other card this year outside of maybe Pikarom being the first tag team. Um, but it was probably hyped more than that. This card, people thought was like it's gonna break the game. It didn't. It didn't break the game.
N-
So
no, and obviously the other card we're waiting on became the big card shortly after this.
yeah. So why don't you intro it?
All right.
Because you have a different take, maybe a different take. You know my take though.
Yeah, it's the very I think divisive card ADP Arceus Dialga and Palkia GX, the tag team with the altered creation attack. Right, as you should be familiar with either from playing with it or playing against it. For the rest of the game, your Pokemon's attack do 30 more damage. That's if one energy, but if it has an additional water energy, then your opponent's when your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out from damage, you take one extra prize card. So you get this set up, and you would often just run over your opponent. I was, as we had said, was a Luke Metal player, so there's kind of this interesting little battle between the two, if it would go that way. But I think this card with the GX attack made single prizers almost unplayable for a long time because a single prizer works because you're not doing as much, but you have time. Now with this, three single prize cards being knocked out, and you lose the game. So that makes single prizers really in a tough spot.
Yeah, I think this card is, and it's mostly because of Alter Creation.
Yeah.
It's regarded as one of the best cards ever, if not the best card ever, at
Mm-hmm.
least Pokemon. It's a bit subjective, or it's very subjective, but it certainly stands up there.
Yeah.
Um, Being able to just take extra prizes is insane. This is like one of those attacks that it like you look at and then you like look at it again and you're like, What is this? This is absurd."
Yeah.
Honestly, people didn't think this card was going to be that good. I looked at a set review. Where someone was like, so we're looking at this new set here, this insane Retro Zekrom, but then there's this like kind of other one, ADP, which doesn't look as good. But yeah, this was obviously very very good. I wasn't necessarily the best deck in the game. It was very close to that for pretty much the whole time I was out, though.
Yeah.
I knew it next to Pikachu and Zekrom, and it was paired with Zacian V, right? Another
Yeah, I
contention
mean, when
for
this came
best
out,
card ever.
Zacian didn't exist, so that was one of the factors why it wasn't as good. Once Zacian came out, which was in the very next set expansion, it just boosted this up so much.
Yeah. But at the same time, it didn't need Zacian. Zacian was nice. It helped with
Hmm.
certain matchups,
Yeah.
but you had, I'd say the best partner would be Keldeo GX, which was also an insanely good card. It's like kind of mill tank in the sense that it walled off GXs, which
Hmm.
was obviously very good, and I think EXs. Um, and then it also had some like solid attacks and just really good partner. And
Hmm.
then you could also do the actually never mind. But I was gonna say you can do like the because with Zacian you try to do Metal Saucer Energy Switch to
Right.
attack with his turn one.
Yeah.
Every player's scariest thought.
I mean, you're right. You'd be on the ladder. You go as ADP. They would go second. Now, the nice thing is there are people that want to go first and second, which is nice. But honestly, you're against ADP. your opponent pulls off Alter Creation turn one, the temptation to hit the concede button certainly was pretty strong because you were in a really tough spot at that point.
Uh, yeah, honestly, if they went first, it was also bad because they'd be guaranteed essentially 80 Ultra Creation turn two,
Right.
and that's good. They haven't won. But they're in a very favorable position. Now you need to pretty much after they Ultra Creation, you need to KO ADP, and
Hmm.
this is where the essentially no weakness issue comes into play massively. Now,
Right.
right now, Dragon Pokemon actually don't have weakness, but as I said, fairies were bad. They weren't being printed pretty much, so they were pretty bad. And then the 280 HP, very hard to KO. And if they miss the KO, then they could use Ultimate Ray, which we were talking about how
Hmm.
Pikachu and Zekrom broke the game, kind of. It was very, very good. And pretty much one of the best decks in format since it came out. ADP just has Pikrom's attack arguably better. Which would you say is better
What between Pikaram and ADP?
with their first attack? Yeah.
I don't know. I certainly think Ultimate Rays. I'm more afraid of that as an opponent. I gotta say, because 150 in the Excel. I just think that one's tougher. But I'm
Yeah, I
not
mean
sure.
they do pretty much the same thing, but
With Alter Creation, then it's a lot. It's tough. Puts you in a tough spot. But
yeah, like but I'm saying without Alter Creation, they're like the same attack,
yeah,
but that's Picaron's like big thing. This is just an afterthought of ADP.
right.
It's like, oh, and you're taking extra prizes, you do more damage, and oh, you got a KO, you
Hmm.
KO'd their Dedenne GX, which like every deck played,
Right.
on and you KO that like turn two or three for half your prizes, and then you just KO a support Pokemon for half their prizes, and you just set up any Pokemon in the game you want because you can just accelerate three basic energy. So there'd probably be Zashi and V. And now your opponent's looking at you, and then they concede because they lost. And so,
Yeah.
like, pretty much you'd be unbeatable. You could put in fun text with this as well, though.
Hmm.
And this is where I think my thoughts on this deck diverge from other people's. I like this a lot. It was certainly playing against it wasn't the most fun, but it was kind of fun to it was fun to play, right? It
You
was
and you were one of those bullies that played ADP and enjoyed
well,
beating all your opponents. Just admit it.
okay, I do like that it like won all the time. When I said that Pikarom auto lost every matchup, ADP like auto won every matchup because it was very good. And then
Hmm.
you'd play it with Zacian, but then you could also this out of all the tag teams except for Mewtwo and Mew, which was designed to be a distinctly had to be a toolbox deck, unless it's a tech option, which isn't a Mewtwo Mew deck.
Hmm.
Um, you'd play this as like you could pair it with so many different things because of the dragon typing and the ability to accelerate energy.
Yeah.
Of course, there is Zacian V, as I said, Keldeo GX, which I also mentioned. You could pair it with Mewtwo Mew, which actually won. Oh wait, did it win? No, it came second in the World's Replacement, the Pog 2, which I mentioned earlier. It came second with Mewtwo Mew and ADP,
Hmm.
and so it was very, very impressive. And then also, it just had so many fun combinations. You could pair it with near the end of its lifetime with the Glaring Bird Trio or a duo. I
Hmm.
guess you wouldn't play Articuno, but it was very, very fun with so many different options. You could even play it with Bronzong with some fun techs. I think I've really, really enjoyed this guy.
Yeah. I mean, look, going against it, your only option really was to knock out ADP after Alter Creation. I mean, obviously you could do it before, even better. But if you could knock out once Alter Creation happened and then Ultimate Ray, the game was over. I don't know what decks could come back from that. Really, maybe Pikarom could, maybe, but
No,
you're in a
no, it could
tough
not.
spot. Now in expanded, you did have Ranger card because certainly expanded going up against a lot more there too. But Ranger just shuts it down. So there you have a one card tech that just removes Alter Creation from the rest of the game. So, but that wasn't available in standard here, so
Yeah.
you're safe from that.
Yeah. So I think it's fun though. Did you play it or not
I
really?
didn't I didn't get my hand on it till very late. I played it a little bit. The problem is that, like I said, I think it made a lot of decks unplayable. And in that regard, it's bad. It might have been bad for the game because I'd rather have more deck choices that people are playing.
Yeah, people say it killed like single prizers, but I didn't really. Like you could, I mean, okay, it was bad for single prizers,
You
but
know, if you
really
had
like tag teams as a
Blacephalon
whole.
and could build it up in just one shot the ADP quickly, but single prizes basically weren't doing that, so you're in a lot of trouble. And
Yeah,
evolution Pokemon certainly weren't an option, like single prize evolution, because you were never going to get the turns to get those off. And it's nice if
yeah,
people can play those.
yeah, but really like with VMAXs and tag teams, they weren't ever really viable. Like current
Yeah.
standard, no one plays evolutions except for Zoroark, which is kind of the closest Pokemon we've seen to Mewtwo. Mew having so many options, like it has a tool to one shot like every Pokemon in the game,
Hmm.
and it's still bad. So
Yeah.
I don't think cards like I don't think you can blame ADP for single prizers being bad now.
That is certainly true. You're right. I mean, the big multi-prize Pokemon, which we still have in the game, make single prizers tough. In some sense, I think Pokemon wanted to go out with a bang with the last tag team here at the end because this became overpowering. And I think it's an interesting lesson to remind us that people didn't think ADP was good when it was coming out, and obviously people could be and it was well off the mark. So that still happens. Those type of miscalculations.
Yeah, but do you have anything else to say about them? I certainly think.
I think
I don't think ADP. I don't think ADP is that badly designed. I certainly see some design flaws where it like hurts a number of like single prizers, but it doesn't. It's not the reason. That's not the only reason. Certainly, that single prizers are bad.
I think when single prizes were like getting towards rotation, I think people were very down on them. The tag team Pokemon. Um,
Yeah.
but now that we've had some time without them, I think people are more fond of them and think enjoyed it. So they were tag teams. I think were I think a reasonable development. I think it's also nice that they only did it for a year. Keeping the card set small for these massive Pokemon is probably a good decision also.
Yeah. One thing that I think is actually more problematic that they cut out was evolution GXs.
Mm.
Um, in all my time of playing Pokemon, as I said, I didn't play. I've always played since the teams were out or newer. I've never once seen anyone play an Evolution GX,
Yeah.
other than through either weird means like Elusive Master, which is Greninja GX's ability, or like just some very strange stuff. But I've never seen anyone just like be like, yeah, I'm playing a stage 2 GX deck. I played one, which was Incineroar GX, which was bad.
Mm.
And then yeah, I've never like really seen anyone play them. They were just pushed out with tag teams. Zoroark GX was the only one that was sort of viable until it rotated. And I guess at the same time, Nagnatal GX was okay, but it wasn't that good.
Yeah, I mean having a basic Pokemon, even though it gave up one extra prize, was just much better than the ones you had to evolve. So, but it then obviously with EXs coming out and being evolving to the EX, that will be nice to see that work in standard, and we'll get to experience that for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to make sure that they're more viable. They've kicked up their HP by like 100, so they'll probably be viable now.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it actually plays itself out. So with the other options people have. Um, so anyway, any final thoughts here on tag team? I think we've kind of get at the end of the discussion there.
Yeah, I think one last thing to say. We are the ultimate tag team podcast.
We should probably trademark that, shouldn't we? So for
Yeah,
our
I think we
originality
should do
there.
that.
And so obviously, check out our YouTube channels, Uncommon Fossil and 10 Types. One of these days, we'll actually figure out how to actually publish a podcast. But until then, you can check us out on our YouTube channels. You want to take us out, Sam? 10 Types?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so obviously press subscribe because we are, as I said, the best tag team podcast.
Yep.
And then also like that's really appreciated.
Yep.
And then comment down below what platforms you'd like to see this on if we're able to figure that one out. Also, just your thoughts on tag teams, on Malamar, and comment down below how many of those questions you got right. Also comment down below if you made it to the end. This has been going on for a little while now. Um, I've been enjoying making these. I hope you've enjoyed listening to them. I hope you've listened to them. I'll say that. But as always, we're both excited to see you in the next podcast.
Take care.